Welcome to the Tyler Werner Show, home of a current 8-0 playoff prediction record for the 2015-16 NFL playoff season. After all home teams advance to the AFC and NFC championship games this week. Quite a season, quite a playoff season. Quite a set of playoff games we had this past week. With pretty much every game, essentially, being able to hold interest in like the wild card weekend, which wasn't entirely like that, but nevertheless, the Eagles coaching search, of course, with the Kansas City Chiefs getting eliminated, the Eagles were officially able to name Doug Pederson the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles with the press conference that occurred earlier today. And, my reaction, and I think, the clear majority of fans' reactions to the Doug Pederson hiring was lukewarm. And, the way I see it, it's not, I can't say whether or not, he's going to fail or anything, or whether he's going to be the guy to lead us to the Super Bowl or not, or whatever, however you want to put it. But just the process in general, just, again, Jeffrey Lurie's ownership of this team, and it's just the past calendar year or so has just been a whirlwind as far as how Jeffrey Lurie has been running this franchise. It goes back to when Howie Roseman essentially got demoted, and Chip Kelly got all the power pretty much in the front office of picking personnel and everything. And of course, one of the things when Chip Kelly was fired and the Jeffrey Lurie press conference, occurred, he was saying, like, we need I think we need to have more of a collaboration when it comes to picking players and everything, and in the front office and everything. And I'm listening to that and I'm just thinking, that's exactly what I was saying last year on the Tyler Werner Show when Jeffrey Lurie decided that Chip Kelly, with very little NFL coaching experience, and despite back-to-back 10-6 seasons, no playoff wins or anything, nothing that would validate granting Chip Kelly full control over player personnel, power, whatever. I'm just like, I was literally saying it myself back last February or March, whenever it was, in the Tyler Werner Show, when it was still on Kutztown Radio, and I'm just thinking, like, there should be more of a collaboration here. And then, upon firing Chip Kelly and then it's like Jeffrey Lurie basically goes back on his word and everything, and it's just like there's like a dysfunction here. Not to mention Howie. I don't understand. Obviously I don't understand why Howie Roseman was that demoted in the first place, but now I don't understand how. You demoted Howie Roseman. I guess it was worth it to demote him, right? Over Chip Kelly having the full and then. So if it was worth demoting Howie Roseman, then how come now he's like right there, like his right hand man again? I don't understand why it was that necessary to. First of all, I guess take the concept of collaboration and throw it out the window. But now, essentially, bring Howie Roseman back, and probably with more power than he had before. Howie Roseman, again, at least he's been a little more NFL experienced than Chip Kelly as far as maybe picking players and whatnot, and the ability to collaborate. But I feel disappointed in the fact that and this might be because of politics or whatever, because of past tenures here with the Philadelphia Eagles or whatever, but absolutely disappointed in the fact that Sean McDermott wasn't even given an interview.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation, that's all.
All right, and again, it's one thing, Doug Pederson, I mean, he doesn't have much of a track record. That's the thing. He doesn't have this long list of NFL coaching experience. As a matter of fact, the coaching experience, I mean, as of late, offensive coordinating with the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, Doug Pederson was basically Andy Reid's recommendation to Jeffrey Lurie, as it is.
Let's go have a ham sandwich.
And okay, that's great. Now, remember last season? This is when Doug Pederson was calling plays and not one wide receiver had a touchdown reception at all last season. So then what happens this season is that Andy Reid takes over play calling for the offense after, such a staggering statistic like that, such a staggering goose egg, to no wide receivers catch a touchdown all season. And now Andy Reid takes over this season play calling for the offense. And we're supposed to be confident of the fact that, after kind of maybe a demotion, maybe having less of a hand in it because of because of things like that and just offensive struggles in general, we're supposed to think, we're supposed to be enthused by that. Again, I'm not saying whether the guy's going to come here and fail and whatnot or whatever, but just the whole process. Meanwhile, you've Sean McDermott, who is, built what has been in the last 5 seasons pretty much consistently a top 5 defense. The past several seasons since Sean McDermott went to coordinate the defense for the Carolina Panthers. Pretty consistently, like in the top 5 for defense. Not to mention on his way to the NFC Championship game. See, and again, I mean, unlike Doug Pederson, who had play calling, kind of taken away from him after last season and that their, I guess, 8-8 campaign or whatever it was, but when they struggled in the passing game with wide receivers. Whereas you got Sean McDermott over here, in Carolina, who has been a strong defensive coordinator, who has a solid track record the past several seasons. Now, again, I don't know if it's politics because there was like friction between Howie Roseman and Sean McDermott or whatever, but Sean McDermott, in the past, several years now, has definitely strengthened his resume. Sure, when he was defensive coordinator here briefly after Jim Johnson, and after, maybe some of the personnel fell off a little bit here defensively and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, maybe it didn't work out, but look at what, again, this is one of these cliches, it's a what have you done for me lately league. And what has Sean McDermott done lately? Well, the past several seasons, he's built he's built a pretty darn good defense. So I don't want to hear the whole idea that maybe he didn't work well with Howie Roseman and there's some friction there and in the past and whatnot. And to me, at this point, this is all water under the bridge. You go out to get the best coach possible, and you know what? This is for Jeffrey Lurie. If I was owner, and I'd be looking at these guys. All right, I look at Sean McDermott. I mean, and again, this is provided he has a great interview, which, well, I'll get to something in a second, but I look at the field, and I don't just not interview Sean McDermott because, he was here and there was some friction or whatever. I look at, all right, who do I think, who has a great track record as of late, whether it's coordinating or coaching? Maybe I consider those guys and whatnot. And then I think to myself, all right, well, if I hire Sean McDermott, just because there was this thing in the past with friction with him and Howie Roseman or whatever, you know what I say? All right, Howie, Sean, you guys are going to work together, all right? That's the bottom line. Not this whole thing where, well, Howie Roseman's my right-hand man. And I don't know if he'd be able to, no. If Sean McDermott is worth, bringing here to coach, if he's a guy that can get the job done better and has a great track record as of late defensively, with by the way, a defense that can use an overhaul schematically from this 3-4 to 4-3, which is more suitable, and maybe some other, fixings amongst the personnel. I don't care. I don't care if 5 or 6 years ago what the beef was. All right. You work together, or it's on you. I don't care. But no, I guess Howie Roseman's the guy that's been here, even though he was demoted last season. I guess he's the guy that's still tenured here. Out of all these other, everybody else, no, Howie Roseman is still here. So I guess that's how it is. I don't know. I just don't understand why Sean McDermott. He was, to a lot, the guys that they were interviewing, to me, he was superior to them all. And apparently, the Eagles were fairly dead set on Doug Pederson. I don't know, because, well, for one thing, nobody else interviewed him apparently, and that's a bit of a red flag to me. Just like this thing where it's like, hey, Andy, why don't you, give Doug Pederson an interview or whatever, and I don't know. But I was listening to, 97.5 Anthony Gargano.
That's exactly right.
Of course. Where the other week ago, Sean McDermott was on his morning program. And, you'd have to, I guess go, Google some audio for it yourself. But, he sounded enthused. It sounded like he had his pulse here. It's like, we got to get, some Philadelphia football back the way it used to be. He took a jet. I forget even what what exactly he said, but it was like a jab at Chip Kelly and how he, was kind of failing here, and an indirect jab, I would say, and just how, the energy was sucked out of the Eagles fan base this season. And it's like he had his finger on the pulse of this fan base. And it just, he took time, to go on a radio show and talk about how he's interested in interviewing for the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't believe any other coaching candidates that the Philadelphia Eagles interviewed, did that. But I don't know. That's just me. My point is, it seems like Sean McDermott was interested in the job. And, again, certainly he's got a superior track record to these other guys that he's interviewed, that Jeffrey Lurie interviewed. And, Jeffrey Lurie in the press conference, they said they were doing this research process or whatever as they were in the process of being about to fire Chip Kelly. Once Chip Kelly was fired, that was it, obviously. But they were thinking a little bit ahead, like if we were going to fire Chip Kelly, researching candidates. So Jeffrey Lurie in the press conference earlier says they had about 25 candidates and they whittled it down to the 6 or whatever that they interviewed or whatever. I'm interested in seeing the list there. I'm interested in seeing if Sean McDermott was even on that at all. But how was he not in one of those 6 guys that were interviewed? It just boggles my mind, really. And I mean, the process, they said themselves. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie said it himself. I mean, they fired Chip, a week early so that they could get a head start on, this coaching search. And yet they were like the last ones to hire a coach. Anyway, I don't know how that makes sense. Not to mention, you interviewed Pat Shurmur and Deuce Staley. Now, Deuce Staley, he's running backs coach. He had an outside chance, obviously, of getting a job. He needs more coaching experience, obviously, before he's really has a legitimate. So, I mean, I'm not going to, criticize. But Pat Shurmur, who has had a head coaching history and coordinating history, a broader, has had a lukewarm, at best, track record as well. But because he's within, let's interview him. But not Sean McDermott, who's over in Carolina, anchoring one of the most consistently great defenses the last few years in the NFL. And perhaps, with a team that went 15-1 this year and has a realistic chance of winning the Super Bowl this year. No, I don't know. No, just don't interview him. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. And it just makes me question, once again, the ownership of this Philadelphia Eagles franchise, and I guess how they decide to hire this head coach. Now, I mean, again, I hate for the actual hiring of the guy to kind of be overshadowed still in my head by just the process that makes me scratch my head. But I can't help but do it. I mean, sure, it's maybe Doug Pederson, he hired Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator. Jim Schwartz, who had a year off from the NFL. I mean, maybe cleared his head. It seemed like he needed a year off after, Detroit and everything. But, it's just like you're interviewing Pat Shurmur, who, oh, by the way, was pretty much like a yes man to Chip Kelly, the guy you just fired. But not Sean McDermott. Not, you had a couple candidates from the New England Patriots, staff, but no, not interview. Andy Reid says, Doug Pederson would be as Andy Reid would.
Just sharp guy.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, let's give him an interview. Even though Andy, even though I guess, Doug Pederson was so ready that Andy Reid had to, strip him of play calling this season. I mean, it doesn't add up. And again, hopefully Doug Pederson does a good job. Yeah, the impression I get is that he's going to be more of a player's guy. He's going to, I guess when he walks by a player in the hallway, he's always going to make sure to say hello or acknowledge him.
Was that like a wise ass comment?
unlike Chip, but again, that's good, and the way it was said, I guess, by Jeffrey Lurie, and this is like a breath of fresh air, I guess, a little bit for the players. This might be more of a player's coach. Doug Pederson, he did quarterback start, for the 1999 Eagles season, before, number 5 took over here for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Number 5 will always love you.
But again, whether or not he's going to be the guy to lead this team to victory and to a Super Bowl title, and hey, I say multiple. Forget just one. I mean, obviously, it'd be great to even just have one Super Bowl ring, but build a dynasty. I mean, obviously, the goal's every year to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, it's not always realistic, and you're not going to win them all, but at least to be a dynasty. I mean, be like the New England Patriots and what Bill Belichick and Tom Brady have done over there. And that's the goal. I mean, after New England won their first Super Bowl after the 2001 season, I mean, yeah, that's great, but that's great, obviously, in that moment. And it's like the greatest thing ever, I'm sure, winning that first Super Bowl. But I mean, don't just stop there. I mean, build a dynasty. And is that what is going to be able to happen here with this new regime? Because I don't know. I don't know. I mean, obviously, Billy Davis, gone. It sounds like Pat Shurmur is also gone. They're looking for an offensive coordinator, I guess. It was said by Pederson earlier, Bradford can fit perfectly in offense. So, now, I still think they need to find, I guess they're going to have to draft a quarterback at some, and maybe groom him to be, I guess the next franchise quarterback. I don't know. Because again, I don't know if Bradford can be, be that guy. And not to mention, Bradford, he's not young. I mean, he's not old, but he's not young anymore, So, I mean, I don't know. But at least I guess the bottom line is this year, I mean, Doug Pederson, he's just going to be expected to, he's going to be expected to use DeMarco Murray the way he's supposed to be used. He's going to be, maybe improve the offensive line a little bit. Just make some general improvements to this team. Make some adjustments that are necessary going forward with the players you have and etc. I mean, it's not like I'm expecting Doug Pederson to immediately have this team in, in Super Bowl contention or anything. But it's just like, do you trust the way this hiring process was done? Do you trust that it's going to lead to that Super Bowl level in the long run? That, to me, that's the bottom line. I mean, again, I'm not expecting, because this seems like a pretty significant amount of rebuild here. Not to mention being bound to some hefty contracts. So I mean, with those, you got to use them to the best of your ability. I mean, build the defense around Fletcher Cox. For now, I mean, run this offense, DeMarco Murray, get him back to being the featured back that he's meant to be, running under center between the tackles. Zach Ertz obviously should continue to be a mainstay in this offense, since again you don't have any really outside wide receivers. So look at that as well. I mean, a lot of that's stating the obvious. But again, it's just, I don't know, a bit of a state of flux, and I'm a little concerned. Maybe not. I'm very concerned about how the process was done, and just a little concerned with Doug Pederson is whether he really is ready to head coach this Philadelphia Eagles team. Oh, by the way, a top 5 football market here in the USA. Oh, by the way, who hasn't won a Super Bowl yet? So, that's asking a lot. Certainly is. So, at least he's gonna be able to relate more than Chip Kelly, maybe to the fan base. And is not gonna blow off press conferences as much and this and that, but Chip Kelly, of course. Oh, is it ironic he gets the job in San Francisco? How, now, of course, down there with Colin Kaepernick, perhaps a guy that he can run his offense around a little more. The ideal offense that he wanted to run here in Philadelphia. Remember, I was saying, well, maybe if Chip stays and doesn't get fired, maybe they can, try to get a quarter. As far the only option pretty much would be to get Colin Kaepernick over here. Well, Chip's fired, but he's going to have Kaepernick over in San Francisco to work with. So it's just a little intriguing. Like can Chip Kelly kind of like revitalize, I guess, Kaepernick's career? I guess it's an interesting story to me that he was hired over there in San Francisco, especially after they fired Jim Harbaugh last year because they were saying like he was too psychotic and too much of a, and I don't know. Then it's like they go and they hire Chip Kelly. It's a bit ironic, but again, if I had to think an incentive was the read option, spread offense, whatever he wants to. I guess they figured it'd be more ideal for him with Colin Kaepernick, I guess, to run it. So, I guess it'll be a little interesting. Just to watch them next year and kind of wonder, I guess, what would, I guess, at the NFL level, how would like a guy like Colin Kaepernick, I guess maybe one of the closest guys you can have to, one of the closest kind of quarterbacks to Marcus Mariota here at the NFL level, I guess running Chip Kelly's offense should be interesting, I guess, but again, I mean, it's just one of these things. I continue to be concerned about the ownership of this team and how this off season is going to play out, I guess, and whatnot. With, I guess there's a player personnel guy that's going to be hired and whatnot. So we shall see. But right now, I mean, I get the sense that the clear majority of fans, including myself, are lukewarm on this hiring of Doug Pederson and underwhelmed by this coaching search this past season or this past month or whatever you want to call it that that Jeffrey Lurie commandeered. I'm underwhelmed by it, and hopefully this Doug Pederson regime will not be underwhelming. So we'll see how things play out. Obviously, we got the conference championship games in the NFL coming up this week. Again, after going out on a limb in the wild card round and picking every away team to win, and surely enough, by the skin of my teeth, with a couple of those games going 4-0, I said this week, well, in the divisional round, well, I didn't say it on the Tyler Werner, but in posting on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show, picked the home teams. Figured there's going to be, some interesting games here, but I see the home teams moving on. While officially it's early for me to make any picks yet. I'm leaning for the Patriots to move on I don't see that pick changing. But I see the Cardinals as well, which I believe is kind of before the playoffs started. It's kind of where I was leaning, anyways. Look at. People say what they want about Tom Brady and whatnot. That play where he ran the ball, he took, a pretty brutal hit after not being able, quite get into the end zone. He's 38 years old, and he's not the most mobile guy in the world, but, he's tough. And then next play, QB sneak, he's, for as immobile as he is, he's probably one of the best quarterbacks, the quarterback sneak ever. But, so, the Patriots look like they're back in playoff form and snuff the torch of the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, and end their massive winning streak that they had going. Broncos move on. Peyton Manning.
Epic comeback starts right here.
And, of course, for perhaps the last time ever, Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning this coming conference championship weekend. I'm looking forward to it. That should be quite a game, but I see the New England Patriots, especially with some revenge here, after they kind of got, they kind of got ripped off in that game a couple months ago in Denver. But, I suspect this time the Patriots go down to Denver and they get it done. And that was a banged up Pittsburgh Steelers team going in there last week and, coming up short, but still putting up a good fight. And I think the Patriots are going to be a little more prepared this one. And of course, the Cardinals and the Panthers. You can kind of flip a coin at this game, but I just, the Cardinals, they have some play. Obviously, Larry Fitzgerald making plays. Obviously, in that epic overtime victory against the Green Bay Packers. The Cardinals, I just feel like they're, a little more complete in the passing game. And, again, Carson Palmer having, his best season ever, it seems. And just a solid set of wide receivers. And just, across the board, a pretty solid team. So I have a sense that the Cardinals are going to win it. As good as the Panthers have been this season, I don't know. I just feel like the Cardinals, they just have a slight edge. So that's where I'm leaning right now. Maybe we'll break the games down a little later this week, but as for now, that's where my stance is on these games. But yeah, nevertheless, it's been an 8-0 wild card and division round combined. So, it's not often I do this, but I don't know who else out there has 8-0 playoff picks right now. I'm not one to gloat normally, but it just feels good because I've never been. I don't even think since doing the Tyler Werner Show, I don't think I've had a 4-0 week. Maybe I have. Maybe I did once. I don't know, but I know I've had 3-1 weeks sometimes where there's just one game that just doesn't go my way, but let alone 2 back-to-back to open up the the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and obviously make up the majority, more than the majority of the playoffs. Pretty solid playoff predictions so far, if I do say so myself. So I'll be back a little later, this week. Talk more playoffs, maybe talk more Eagles, maybe get into a little more Flyers talk, which we haven't been. It's kind of hard sometimes when you got so much with football and playoffs. new coaching hirings and this and that. So, get around to it when we can. But, I mean, certainly, we're at like we're past the halfway point for the Flyer season. So, things are going to start to pick up. And we got the Olympic winter break coming up soon, too, for that. So, thanks for tuning in to the Tyler Werner Show. That'll wrap things up for this edition. Again, Doug Pederson, I just get the sense lukewarm reception so far. And again, a lot of that has to do with the process of essentially picking him. So we'll see how things play out in the long run, sure enough. And we'll see how, who they decide to make offensive coordinator and this and that. Because we've got an interesting offseason coming up on our hands. So that in mind, thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Tyler Werner Show. Like the page at facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. And stay subscribed right here on the YouTube channel. The champion of game day catering is the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show, Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs.
We prepare our balls over time, and that's the essence of the preparation.
On top of that, another trademark of Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs is Brady's signature rubbing process.
When I pick balls out, to me, they're perfect. I don't want anyone touching the balls after that. I don't want anyone rubbing them. To me, those balls are perfect.
What is a concern is the texture of the balls, and again, that's the point that Tom hit on hard.
The champion of all game day catering dishes is Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs, the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show.
Okay, Rocco, pretend I'm the girl that you want to ask out on a date.
How about maybe you and I, maybe we go out together, get something to eat, I don't know, maybe laugh a little bit, who knows, I don't know, would you like to maybe, you want me to go out together? What do you think? Would you like to?
You need to make more eye contact and you sound way too nervous.
You want to hear me say it? You want to break me down? All right, I'm afraid. For the first time in my life, I'm afraid.
Having a tough time asking out ladies? You need to see Clubber Lang for a lesson.
Hey, woman. Hey, woman. I bet you stay up late every night dreaming you had a real man, don't you? I tell you what, bring your pretty little self over to my apartment tonight, and I'll show you a real man.
Build confidence with the ladies like never before with Clubber Lang's dating services. The most highly recommended in all of the Delaware Valley.
I am ranked number one. One! That means I'm the best.
We'll have some skirt steak, some brisket, little piece of that New York steak, a couple of them steak fingers, and a burger.
You've known for a long time that you were going to have to get real about fat or stay real fat. It didn't get that way by accident or by some outsider's doing.
Put some macaroni and cheese on there, too. Is there any chicken fried steak left?
Your weight just keeps creeping up or maybe even shooting sky high.
3 slices of pecan pie and 2 cups of coffee.
You have a decision to make. You know it, and so do I.
Yes, all right.
You need prescription diet pills or other diet aids to lose weight.